Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. So this past week, a colleague recommended that I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and I am so happy that I did. This book is broken into 2 parts, private victories and public victories, and this week we are going to talk about the first part, which is an incredible exercise in mindset, prioritizing, and efficiency.
Yeah, and as always, whenever we kind of look at these kind of books, we want to put our own little personal finance spin on it and just help you kind of take control of your own life and your finances so you can kind of make sure all your financial goals get taken care of.
Absolutely. It's great to look at popular positive thinking books. This one takes it a step further and gets into organizational and actual tips for efficiency. And there's a few core concepts that really stuck out to me in this first section that I wanted to narrow in on today. And like you said, Cam, make that tie in back to personal finance. So those are the circle of concern and the circle of influence, beginning with the end in mind. And he is very, very famous 4 quadrants of productivity. And don't worry if you have no idea what those things are because you haven't read the book, as I hadn't before this week. By the end of this show, you'll be very familiar with each and have some really good tools to help you prioritize and move forward on the things that are most meaningful in your personal finance journey.
Yeah, so like Christine said, we're just going to kind of cover the first half of the book because that's all the time Christine's had to read this week. But there's a lot in here we think will actually help you and grow and develop and take, like I said before, take real control over your own personal finances and just pick up a few quick tips along the way.
Sure. And I would like to start with a delineation that he had made right at the beginning. And it's about shifting our attitudes and shifting our perspective as a person from being dependent, which is where you're thinking about other people, having them take care of you. It's very much a you mentality, what you did or didn't do, to independence, which is an I mentality. I can do it. I'm responsible. I'm self-reliant, self-directed. To then finally getting to that place of interdependence where we focus on the we and we look at, as a society, as the people that we've aligned, combining our best efforts, combining our talents, our specific skills, and getting into the place where we actually be of greater benefit to each other and really share our victories. So the first 2 were the move into private victories, which is kind of what we're talking through today, that move from dependence to independence. And finally, as you work on the public victory side of it, which we may get into in a later episode, you will move into that interdependence space. And this is a really interesting perspective for me because we live in a culture that kind of sees independence as the be-all, end-all, right? Like that is what we praise. We praise the self-made man or woman, the person that has achieved that success or richness or whatever it might be on their own. But really, a lot of the best results are team-based. It's synergies. And it's the work that needs to be done behind the scenes to develop trust between parties so that you can create this culture that really moves to satisfy everyone's needs over the long term. And I think that's a pretty interesting perspective. And I mean, if you want to think about it in terms of financial planning, think about it in terms of you and your partner if you're partnered. It makes financial planning a team sport. And in that relationship, if you can be aligned in your goals and in your visions, the end result of what you can accomplish as a pair is greater than the output you could have generated on your own. Even if you're the one that's doing all the planning, having those conversations, having access to additional resources, having another brain whose brain power can be working on this too, it's a fantastic synergy that can be created.
So enough preamble, I guess. Maybe we should just get right into some of these opening core concepts. And apparently this guy is a big fan of circles.
Well, this is one of my favorite core concepts, and it seems to be incredibly relevant today because we are living in a world today that has a lot of chaos. There is the markets, there's politics, there's unpredictability at every turn. And when you feel that out of control, it is easy. If you're someone like me that maybe has a leaning towards a little bit more than normal anxiety, you tend to get into these cycles of worry where you are ruminating, you are actively thinking over a problem and having your brain try to solve an unsolvable problem because it's something that you can't influence. So Stephen Covey's concept is brilliant, in my opinion. What it is he basically drew a circle. And he said, within this circle is every single thing that you are concerned about. Hence the name, the circle of concern. So all of your worries, all of your fears could be around your family. It could be personal. It could be political, spiritual, in community. Anything that is stressing you out goes within this circle.
Yeah, my circle of concern currently is a circumference of about 40,000 kilometers.
So you're saying all that you're worrying about is the entire planet.
I'm trying to be conservative here. I could stretch it out a couple of parsecs, but I'll be okay with just the one thing for now.
Man, oh man, oh man. But the purpose of this exercise, and yes, our problems seem to be global in nature these days. The purpose of this exercise is in that circle is every single thing that is bothering you, that is on your mind, that is actively taking mental real estate in your head. And outside of the circle is all of the things going on in the world right now that you do not have concern about. I guess that's a pretty small outside of the circle right now, but as it goes. Now, this is when it becomes obvious that there are some things in this world that we cannot influence. We cannot control the outcome. We have no say. We're just not powerful enough. We're not influential enough. We're not in the right position. Whatever the reason might be, there are certain things that no amount of worry will do anything good about. So what Stephen Covey does, and the brilliant part is he draws within that first circle, within that circle of concern, a second circle, which is called the circle of influence. Now, these are the things that you can do something about. These are the things that you can influence the outcome. You can affect change, or you can influence someone else to affect change. So by creating these categories in your mind, you're differentiating what you can actually change the outcome for and what you cannot. And all of this lets you direct your mental resources, your great brain's problem-solving abilities towards things that you can actually make a difference with.
Yeah, I guess one example would be, depending where you work, you may not have any control whatsoever over the entire sector your company is a part of, but you can control your own department. You can control your own job duties. You can control the things you do on a daily basis. What you do on 9 to 5 won't affect the whole industry, that whole sector, but you can have control over that little corner of that sector in that company, on that floor, wherever you are, that you do have some control or at least take up space in.
Well, that's it. And our brains are incredible problem-solving mechanisms, right? It's their purpose. If you give your mind a problem by thinking about the same thing repeatedly, it will try to solve that problem. And like we've said in other shows, a lot of mental health concerns like anxiety or depression is trying to solve a problem where you feel like it's unsolvable. So this solution, by differentiating between the two, by creating your own circle of influence, can actually have some really positive mental health benefits because you are deciding to exclude from your thinking, your rumination, your focus, things that are outside of your power to influence. And you are proving to yourself that as you do influence the things that are important to you, that are in that circle of influence, that you have the ability to do so. So once you see yourself have a successful impact and a successful outcome towards something that was concerning you, that empowers you to want to do it again and to see things as challenges that can be solved rather than just problems that are sucking the life and the joy out of us. So it's stopping us from being reactive, and it is making us much more intentionally proactive on things that we can take accountability for.
So that's kind of like the self-help way of looking at this, but I want to kind of pull this back over to the personal finance side. I know that we can kind of guess how there's some things that are in our control, that are out of control, how we spend our money kind of ties into that. Sometimes we even spend money when things are out of our control for that semblance of control and other things like that. So let's kind of dig into how we can kind of take this and bring it to the money side of the argument.
Absolutely. So let's have a personal finance example. And I think that this is where we take the circles of control and we take them out of our mind and we put them into practical application. So let's say that you have a problem that you want to solve. Let's say you don't have enough money to meet a goal and you need an extra, $200 a month. And for whatever reason, due to circumstance, you can't change jobs and there's no easy way for you to make more money. So those are the two levers that people will generally pull if they're trying to hit a goal. They'll either earn more or they'll spend less. So in this case, we're looking at what is within our realm practically of control. So what you might decide to do is identify lifestyle habits or spending patterns that actually are not moving you towards that goal of saving that $200 a month. This will actually start showing you some vices. It'll start showing you things that you just kind of unconsciously fall into that you can consciously then change. So in this example, let's say you're like Cam and I. You are a busy parent. And every single morning, if you're anything like us, you are managing the kids, the dog, getting lunches ready for the kids, and you're last on the list. So you often find yourself, okay, this is maybe hitting a little too close to home, spending that $20 on lunch a couple times a week. And that is starting to add up.
Yes, even though the kid wakes up at 5:30, you'll be surprised how those hours just magically disappear every single day.
It's quality parenting time. It's quality parent-child relationship building time. We are happy to do it. But if my goal is to find that $200 and I'm looking for leakage in my budget, where are areas where I'm spending where I don't have to? And if I fit in this category of I'm shopping for convenience because I'm hungry and I don't have food, of course that's a valid concern, but it's something that is within my influence that I can address. So I would say the first step is identifying that saving that money is more important to me than doing the quick and easy, right? And then I would have to identify that changing my habits around time management are actually part of that solution. And maybe buying easy to assemble bits and bobs for your lunch is part of it too, right? So you might have to take that conscious step when you're in the grocery store of, okay, you know what? I don't have a lot of time in the morning. What can I easily put together for myself and not just for my kids?
A 2-pound brick of cheese.
We are pictures of health over here. But no, if
With
you're
some cashews on the side.
If you're anything like us, we tend to be last on our lists, right? So it's compounding little choices that need to work together once you're conscious of a habit or, like I said, a time management event or an exercise that you need to change. And I think this is good. This is an exercise in personal power. And if you're looking at these little points of leakage, whether it's that coffee, whether it's that lunch, whether it's the reverse of that, where the kids are now coming home, they're hungry, you haven't meal planned, so now you have to go buy something quick for them, that's another leakage there too, right? There are all these points of decision where if you're aware of them, you can actively decide to change the outcome.
I don't know. This sounds like a very dressed up version of like a budget talk going on. Budget your money, budget your time,
Self-empowerment.
budget your pantry, budget your kitchen.
You know what? None of this stuff is sexy. And I think all personal self-improvement advice is trying to show that it's a game that we play every day in our own minds. And it is the same basic advice that we all know we need to follow. Eat healthy, go to the gym, spend time with your kids, be organized. But you know what? Sometimes you really need that why. You need that reason of doing it. And sometimes in personal finance, we have this really great mechanism that lets us think more clearly. And that's by having a measurable goal. And that measurable goal will then give you the ability to not think of it generally like I have to be healthy, I have to save money. It's I need $200. Where can I find it? And when you make it more practical, you make it more achievable. So what you tell your mind to look for, you will see more of. And what you tell yourself you need to do, you will begin to problem solve and find solutions that will move you in that general direction.
Yeah, when it comes to like financial planning does not work without a goal. Like even our fancy new software will not work unless you put a goal into it. Our 5-page plan is just a fancy spreadsheet with some bells and whistles if you don't have a goal attached to it.
Well, and the real power is in the conversations that we have. And while I respect DIYers for their initiative to do things themselves, there is so much that can come out of talking to someone that sees these things every day and that has seen the solutions that you need time and time again that you may not yet be aware of. And they can, through experience, bring up planning points, maybe that you hadn't thought of or hadn't seen. But yeah, taking it right from the book here, Stephen Covey had this responsibility. We think of the word responsibility. He actually broke it into 2 parts. It was the word response and the word ability, which is the ability to choose our response. So again, yes, that's very self-empowerment, but it's understanding that we have that choice to choose. And I'm going to read a quote from the book because I liked it a lot. Highly proactive people recognize that responsibility. They do not blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choices based on values rather than a product of their conditions based on feelings, end quote.
Now say that 3 times fast.
You know what? I stumbled over it. It might end up at the end of the show, but I stumbled over it about 3 times. So there you go. My reading abilities need a little help. But this is a powerful way to take ownership. And that is what I think Stephen Covey was trying to convey through this first section of his book. Yes, we cannot change some circumstances, but there is still a lot. Our reactions. There is still a lot within our control that will ultimately change circumstances over time in our favor if we look for ways to see the possibilities and to create options instead of feeling stuck. So it's this move away from being reactive and letting circumstances and other people control your outcomes. It's taking ownership of the outcomes and taking ownership of the place you are in your life right now. And that leads us right into the next point, which is his number 2, beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah, I guess this number 2, it's kind of the what will happen if I do or do not kind of achieve my goal. Like this is kind of the typical, imagine yourself, it's during your funeral 5,000 years from today on a distant planet or something, whatever you want it to be. But just looking back on your life and did you do the things you wanted to do? Did you kind of slay those demons, achieve those goals? And was anything really worth it in the end?
Well, it's a funny thing because this is the second book that I've read in the last, 2-3 weeks that had this exact same scenario in it, where, like you said, the chapter began with you imagining your funeral and imagining all of these areas of your life. You as a family person, you as with your friends, in your work, in your community efforts, how you want to be remembered. And I think that people defer to the end because it's just such a defined, it's over now, right? So if we have that end point in mind, like the beginning of this chapter, it allows you to clearly see where you're wanting to go. And Stephen Covey's whole principle here is to design your life in each core area, so family, friends, work, community, as working toward the end that you would like to achieve. Now, this isn't necessarily just goals-based. This could be how you want people to perceive you, or how you want people, maybe a better way of saying it is to experience you. What feelings, what emotional response are you trying to have people have as they are experiencing you? And I think that that's really important because there's impact in the way that you make people feel. So it comes back around to this whole thing. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know if you're lost? And this feeling that we have unlimited time. Whereas when we come to that actualization in our minds that we do have an end, we very quickly realize that time is limited and it's really our most valuable asset.
Yeah, I know this book with this kind of whole big second concept, it's just people have the idea that, there's just unlimited time. And for some reason, people always think that there's also somehow unlimited money because that big lotto payday is coming down the road. So there's limited time, there's limited money, but there's still these goals, there's these intentions, or at least we hope there is. If there isn't, that's a whole other podcast we can do. We'll probably have done by this point already.
Seriously. But you're right. It's these checkpoints that make us realize everything in this world is finite. Our resources, ourselves, like our relationships, everything is capable of change. So it's being intentional about making sure that that change is in the direction that you want it to go. But let's look back to financial planning. Financial planning starts with a current position. If you were to sit across from me in my office, the very first thing I would ask you is, where are you today? Before we started getting into what you're trying to achieve, what goals are you trying to set, we need to start with where you are now. And the reason
I am in your office.
How did I get here? I punched it into my GPS and it got me there pretty quick and easy. Well, no, but I think this is more airy-fairy, right? This is more the vision that you have for your life, or in a financial planning concept, the goals financially that you're trying to achieve. So I would like to get to retirement with X amount of dollars saved. I would like to retire at age XYZ. I would like to leave a legacy of whatever it might be. All of these things are important, identifiable things, but unless you went through that prior step of beginning with the end in mind, where you thought through what your final outcome was, how do you know what to measure? And the vision is what sets the measurement. If you say this is a realistic and achievable goal, I need to then work backwards and figure out the steps I need to get there.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the kind of classic Mythbusters quote, which is the difference between science and screwing around is just writing things down. And with this, you just have to write things down and commit to it and actually do it, and not just have this be some sort of idea you have on Monday and is completely gone by Wednesday.
Exactly. Well, and how much of science or of success in general is a series of subsequent failures that were not failures. That's the wrong word. They were learning experiences. So if you view this life as a great experiment where you become better and you improve yourself, you allow yourself the platform and the window to fail. I mean, look at us recording this podcast right now. We don't know what we're doing. We've been doing it for 3 years, but we just picked up a mic, got a few ideas, started talking, and suddenly there's almost 10,000 of you that follow us on a regular basis and listen to us regularly.
Well, now I'm on the production side. I have somewhat of an idea of what I'm doing.
I'm a talker, so that means I'm making it up as I go along. But no, as we see what we would like to do. And we had started with this with a vision of, how do we educate people? How do we get people ready? How do we help people understand their own personal finance better so that, number one, they can tackle their challenges in their own lives better themselves? And number two, if they do come to our office, that they have this insight, that they're already prepared, that they've been asking themselves the right questions ahead of time.
Yeah, and I guess when it comes to goals, a big part of it is making sure you are doing goals that you actually want to do. Because it's very surprising. You can kind of get caught up with work and busyness and things you think you should be doing, things you're expected to be doing, but it won't actually make things any better for you. You'll just kind of check a box and realize it was a very hollow and needless box.
Well, you know what? There is a story that I've used for years and years and years, and I had no idea where it came from. And I read it again in this book. And it's this concept of having your ladder on the wrong wall. And that just simply means that sometimes we spend so much effort working towards an outcome that we think is important, but at the end you realize it was someone else's outcome and not yours. It was someone else's value. It was someone else's desire for you. And if that doesn't align with what you truly wanted for yourself, a lot of people feel like they've wasted time, they've wasted effort and energy. You think about it like this, like you can be a huge success in a profession that you hate and still feel like a complete failure because you've spent hours of your life, you spent your very existence on something that to you didn't matter. And the person sitting next to you, they could decide that this meant everything. And having the level of success that you had would have changed their lives and actualized who they wanted to be as a person. So priority, doing that work of understanding your values, understanding your goals and your objectives, financial or not, can make all the difference. And judging yourself or allowing yourself to be judged by someone else's metric is a complete fool's errand, because it is absolutely irrelevant if their values are different than yours, or if their goals and priorities are different than yours. It's not always about money. It's not always about status. Sometimes it's about family or faith or community. All of these different things that matter. But who is anyone else to say that your life wasn't valid if it was inconsistency, if it was congruent with your own deep values and core beliefs about who you are and what you wanted to achieve? Really, what I'm trying to say is we are the only true determining factors in whether or not our life was a success. And the definition of success is a definition that you get to create for yourself as you evaluate who you want to be. Like Stephen Covey said, at the end of your life, at the end of this period of time that we've been given to influence and impact change.
Oh, I think we kind of talked enough about kind of section 2 about circles. So let's move on to section 3, which is all about squares.
That's right. This is a book of many shapes. So this is Stephen Covey's famous important versus urgent quadrant. So think of the square, think of the box that is quartered. And basically in the first quarter, it says...
I'm pretty sure that's the exact definition of a quadrant.
Thank you, Myth or Math Man. Our mathematician over there is keeping me in check. So let's look at his famous quadrant. The first square is important and urgent. The second quadrant is important but not urgent. The third one is not important, but it is still urgent. And finally, in number 4, not important and not urgent.
Yes, this is much different than the quadrants I've been dealing with. I'm going to back on like a Star Trek Next Generation DS9 kick, so it's been alpha, beta, gamma, and delta quadrant a lot for me lately.
Very little math involved in this one, so you know what? It's all good. Most people's work happens in quadrant number 1. So these are the things that are both important and asking you to give them attention immediately. So this could be emails, it could be phone calls, it could be people jumping in front of you.
It could be a screaming child.
Anything. But the point here is this is immediate. This is not long-term planning, or this is not something that required some thought around what would lead to success in your career, in your business. What are the strategic things that you should be doing? All those strategic things are usually found in quadrant number 2, which is important but not urgent. And this is a very, very tricky one because, like you said, no one is screaming at you here. If you do not do this work, no one notices until it has compounded over time and created a bad negative impact. Like if you're not talking to clients, if you're not doing regular touch points with your customers, over time it will get noticed, but it's not in your face asking for attention today.
Yeah, I guess on an entrepreneurial level, kind of that first quadrant will make sure your company is still running next week. The second one will make sure your company is still running next year.
Well, yeah, and in quadrant 2 are the fundamentals of who you want to be as a business or as a employee or whatever your role is. It's that extra level of how to be really good long term. But it is so, so hard to ignore once you've dealt with the first quadrant, the call, the siren call, or the anxiety generated by something urgent, even if that thing, like in the third quadrant, is not important. It's hard to say no. It's hard to turn your attention to something that is not immediately asking for your input, even though it will have a greater impact on you over the long term. So really, this quadrant to me was an exercise of congruence. How congruent are the things that you are doing on the daily to your actual alignment with where you want to be when you did that begin with the end in mind exercise? Are you actually reflecting on how your daily activities will take you where you want to go? Are they moving you in the right direction? Or is it a lot of activity that is being generated that is not creating long-term growth? And this is the whole adage that you can be incredibly busy but not productive, or not productive on things that matter over the long term, or things that will create sustainability or good relationships over time, because relationships too take a lot of energy, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. And I mean, he had another great one-liner in the book that you're supposed to be efficient with things, but you've got to take your time with people, right? You can't have that same level of efficiency when you're dealing with people, because you have to try to build that relationship, and you have to seek to understand and seek to explain correctly.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of round out the quadrant with the fourth part of the quadrant, which is the not urgent and not important at the same time, which, because of how things have gone kind of in that circle of chaos that's been going on, that is my favorite part of the day.
Circle of chaos. We've renamed it. Sorry, Stephen Covey. Yeah. Well, and this is an exercise in prioritizing. And this is an exercise of seeing how you can live your best life through daily actions today. And this really answers the question of, in your work objectives, if your job is in alignment with where you want to go and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish and what you want your colleagues or the people that know you to say about you at the end. The daily tasks don't diminish the value of the things that you do repeated every day, because they compound and they create your life stone by stone, step by step. It is probably the most powerful thing. In principle, the small things that are repeated, good or bad, have consequences and implications, and those will materially shape the platform that you're standing on later. Whether it's solid or whether it's rocky or whether it's a little bit flimsy, it's all being created task by task, day by day. So what is the solution for this? If you're in the position of delegation, if you have that ability, Stephen Covey said that delegating is the biggest statement of trust that you can place in another person, to say, you know what, I'm going to give this to you, other person that I work with. I'm going to hands off it, or to a partner or a spouse. And I believe in you and your ability. I'm not going to micromanage this. I'm not going to tell you how I would have done it unless you want that guidance. I am going to trust in your ability to think through and reason through this. And I'm going to believe that your output would be just as successful in this form as mine would be. It's a huge vote of confidence. I mean, you can do this for kids as well. Well, you're giving them more and more responsibility as they grow. Rather than taking that boost of confidence for yourself because you've solved a problem, you give that boost of confidence to them by allowing them to solve a problem, or cut up a piece of fruit, or set the table, or whatever it might be, help with making the meal. And in financial planning, it's making sure that you are having that alignment as well, that congruency in the activities that you are taking. Like we said in our previous example, that they line up with the goals. And if it's not something that you can influence, there was a great example in the book where, let's say you have an employer that keeps giving you more and more and more work. In the book, Stephen Covey had someone who created a timeline and said, you know what, you've already given me tasks A, B, and C. Now you're giving me this new one. Help me prioritize with me so that I can see what your objectives are, what makes you, my boss, my supervisor, happy, in the sense that you're still satisfied with my work, because I cannot do all of these things in the same time slot. So it's having the courage to speak up in those circumstances and to essentially say, help me help you in the most efficient way possible. And of course, not every employer will be willing to have those conversations, but if they are, it's a fantastic starting point for building that trust and to show that you are trying to create that alignment with them and with that organization. So that's the way that we saw part 1 of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like I said, lots of room for self-improvement here for all of us. Even for us as we run businesses, there are always ways that we can look at our own lives and say, you know what, this could be more efficient. This could be kinder. This could have more gentleness to it. And I think that regular self-evaluation, whether it's personal, whether it's in your financial planning, is the way to keep that forward momentum to your goals. So if you'd like help, and if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. And until next time, take care.
And all the best.
It says highly productive, pardon me, I read it wrong. Highly proactive people recognize, I took responsibility right there. I'm going to try again for a third time. Highly proactive people recognize that, oh my goodness. Okay, we're just going to cut.